How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 8 of What If Deku Had Bond's Powers. And now, before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to please put your what if suggestions down in the comments section below. And now, let's begin. Alright, class, let's begin the final exams, Aizawa would say, before leading them down to the locker rooms where they would then get changed into their hero costumes. Once they were in their hero costumes, they would follow Aizawa all throughout the UA campus until they finally reached this huge complex where on a billboard, just right in the smack dab middle of it, would read Final Exam Complex. As Izuku would be reading this, he would then be handed a card that told him what listing he was going to be in. He was in the last fight, which he just happened to be all by himself in this fight. Mineta hadn't been moved up just yet into Class 1A, so he was still hasn't taken the final exams yet and wasn't going to, as he was going to be taking the final exams with just the regular classes that he was in. So with him taking those, there was an odd number of kids, meaning Izuku was going to be in against All Might by himself. So since he was by himself, he was going to be versing All Might by himself with no one there to help him, and so with that basically being the final battle, Izuku was going to be last. And since Izuku has basically already proven himself time and time again, being an All Might sidekick and stopping hundreds of villains, and even stopping one of the world's most threatening villains. Sure, he did get a smack on the wrist for killing Shigaraki, but that wasn't before Shigaraki had beaten him a ton, and it basically looked like Izuku had no choice. As you could plain as day see, Izuku was holding back, and he wasn't going to be able to beat him with him holding back so much. So with him holding back, he couldn't beat him, and so he had to go all out, which would end up causing the death of Shigaraki. So as all the rest of Izuku's classmates would end up going, including Meliodas, as they would all end up passing, as with just the training and not wanting to fail their fallen classmate Toga and Mina, they all fought through their teachers, easily sweeping through them with no losses, which then left Izuku versus All Might. Many of them thought that their streak was over, as Izuku just had no chance at beating All Might. However, that was because they were strikingly just not comparing or giving Izuku the credit he deserved. Sure, they saw someone that was so strong kill Toga, one of their strongest classmates even, and Izuku was easily able to beat him. However, they thought All Might was just far leagues above it, and if All Might was there, All Might would have just easily stopped him. However, since All Might wasn't there, and Izuku was struggling, they still thought Izuku was comparably weaker than the likes of All Might. So, with a deep breath, Izuku stepped into the city with just the one thought. He was going to beat All Might and show all of his classmates really how strong he was. Even Meliodas was holding back up until this point, so no one really knew how strong the power of these two sins were. So, as Izuku stepped in and the match begun, Izuku would sense All Might was flying down towards him at an incredible speed, rushing towards him as his fist would wind back before slamming it into the side of Izuku's face. However, Izuku didn't budge one bit, merely tanking the blow right as it hit him. Izuku would stare on towards All Might as if giving him a look. "Is that all you're going to do?" Izuku would ask, not through talking, but through just the sheer look of his eyes, and All Might could as day tell, translating what Izuku had just said to him. As All Might would stare on towards Izuku, Izuku would then headbutt All Might right in the head, as Izuku would and grab his fist, wrapping his fingers around one another before slamming it into the chest of All Might, right by his just weak point. As Might would end up being hit right there, Izuku would end up seeing All Might fly up in the air, Izuku would raise his fist up into the air as well, slamming it down onto All Might right as he jumped up to him, which has basically become Izuku's signature move. With All Might on the ropes, All Might's weights that he had been wearing had broken off, as he was now going full speed. All Might would rush towards Izuku, slamming a punch into his gut, however it would only be tanked by Izuku as well. As Izuku would wrap his fist and fingers up once again, slamming this time both of his hands into the sides of All Might, snapping All Might's jaw, breaking it entirely. As it would end up holding his limp jaw as he was only dangling there, All Might would end up calling the match, not wanting just for this brutal scene to be laid out in front of his own class. So with that, Izuku would be given the fighting victory, and this was even more proof to Nezu that Izuku was leaps and bounds ahead of his classmates, and that Izuku was going to become a hero far sooner than any of them else. So Nezu, just as one last speculation, would give Izuku a test. This test was the final test he would have given all of the third years that would basically just tell Nezu if they were ready to become heroes or if they had to be held back for a fourth year in the next or the second years moving up to the third year's class. So as Izuku would go through this test, he would easily ace every single question, as his knowledge from basically just being hero work for that 1 week he was at as All Might's sidekick had proven to be just way too much for everyone else. Izuku was far just stronger and better than all the rest of his classmates, and it showed. Izuku was easily just so much smarter than the rest of them, which is quite shocking considering what he had come from, living off of the street, having to steal things, and now losing his girlfriend. Izuku, however, didn't let this get to him, and was now the smartest in heroics in his own class. Nezu, not wanting who just to have the rest of Izuku's class not be able to take the test, would also give the test to some other people, and Meliodas would be one of the passing grades as well. So with that, we would end up seeing Izuku now becoming a hero. As Izuku becoming a hero would then end up leaving UA. However, he would have to take the hero licensing exam to get his quirk license. Just the fact that he graduated UA with stunning marks isn't going to give him a hero license just willy-nilly. They're not going to be handing it out or throwing it. So Izuku would be forced to stay in UA until he was able to get his license, which came quite quickly, not even a month after the final exams were held. And so with the help of Izuku, they were all able to easily pass through the hero licensing exam, easily getting their hero license and quirk license, allowing for them to be able to use their quirks in public without just the express permission of all the other heroes that might have been around them. So with that, Izuku would officially graduate from UA High School. As with that, Izuku graduating from UA High School, he would leave to become just a new hero. And of course, a new hero on the scene was not going to get as much recognition, say as much as All Might. However, just with the amount of fame Izuku had built up, just from the fact that he had managed to beat Shigaraki, just got him enough fame to be jumped up into the top 100 heroes already, as analysts of heroes who do the rankings would end up looking and just analyzing the fight with Shigaraki, wondering how strong Shigaraki really was, and would end up giving him the determining that Shigaraki just had the strength of within the top 25 heroes. They couldn't accurately do it because it was an unranked person that was fighting them. However, as the years would end up passing and Izuku would end up rising through the ranks, they would end up realizing just how strong Shigaraki was. However, as we cut back after Izuku graduating UA, Meliodas would end up doing the same, following Izuku, as both of them would end up creating creating just a quite good partner in crime duo type deal. And so with them basically just being partners, they would easily end up defeating all of these villains in their path, as Meliodas would end up seeing a striking resemblance in Izuku, with this resemblance basically just resembling that of Bon, as Meliodas had missed him ever since Bon had kicked him through that mysterious magic portal that one day just showed up. And so with Izuku being there, Meliodas quite enjoyed Izuku's company, and with doing that, they would end up hunting down all of the crime. I'm not quite sure if I ended up doing the overall thing, since with my lack of uploads, I've basically scaled this series out over 3 weeks. My apologies. Daily uploads should be getting back with tomorrow, the next day, and the next day after that, so I hope you all enjoy me getting back into the swing of things. So with that, Izuku would end up just searching around the city, as he would end up going to Sir Night-Eye's agency looking for help, as Izuku, remember, was still quite a newbie. When he was still a student at UA and the sidekick of All Might, Izuku could get away with small things, but now with him signing with his own agency, with him being in the top 100, having his own agency, along with Meliodas signing with that same agency as well, both of them couldn't really damage too many things, which caused them to hold back a ton. So with his Izuku needing help with finding some major villain things, as Izuku liked rising up in the ranks. Izuku's one dream was to become the number one hero after all. So Izuku would look towards Sir Night-Eye, who was All Might's sidekick and was even at one point in the top 10 heroes in just the country. So Izuku, seeking help, would go to Night-Eye, who would end up telling him about a villain he had been searching for quite a while. And this villain he had been searching for was the villain Overhaul. But he cannot rush into Overhaul's facilities just going crazy, as if he were to do this, that would cause Izuku much harm, possibly even killing him, as Sir Night-Eye knew how powerful and strong Overhaul just happened to be, and he didn't want this rookie hero to end up dying just because of their lack of experience, as Night-Eye had seen it all too often. So with that, Izuku and Meliodas would end up just going under Sir Night-Eye's wing, not as a sidekick, just as more learners. Night-Eye had known that Izuku and his sidekick, air quotes there, Meliodas, as he had become, or seen how they had become quite the strong hero duo, stopping many crimes. However, they were still looking for that big rank up crime that was just going to elevate them into stardom. Izuku didn't care about fame, but Izuku's time on the streets knew that with fame came money, and Izuku just didn't want to have the possibility of him getting injured and not being able to be a hero anymore, where he would not be able to make the money that he could as a hero. Izuku didn't want that to happen, so he wanted to make as much money as he could now, so he could do it for very little in the future, allowing for him to take just the jobs that people might not be able to afford, as heroes were even sometimes paid by the public to go and search out a certain villain. So as Izuku and Meliodas would be walking down a certain path, just hunting out this Overhaul, the villain, or this weird villain that Night-Eye had told them about, all of a sudden, a young girl would end up bumping right into the path of Izuku. As Izuku would see this, the girl would end up looking up to him, as Izuku would end up looking down back at her. "Oh, hello there," Izuku would say towards her. However, Overhaul end up looking towards the girl before yelling at her to get away from him, as Izuku's seeing this would end up just questioningly before he would up looking down at a mugshot that was still in his hand. Overhaul had seen it as he would rushing towards Izuku, going for a punch. However, Izuku would dodge this before propelling his hand right into the chest of Overhaul, pulling it out. As Overhaul's chest now with a huge hole in it, Izuku would grab the hand of Eri before they would end up rushing off. Now, once again, I would just like to say that I'm sorry if I did this Eri arc or this Overhaul arc before, as, you know, it's kind of been a while since I did some of these parts, which is just all my fault since I didn't bother uploading, just rather taking a break. So I'm sorry if I basically just recapped the Overhaul arc. So once again, I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys can forgive me for that one. And that is where part 8 of What If Deku Had Bond's Powers comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. I thank you all for watching, once again, and goodbye.